Hey everybody, and welcome to DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen, and with me as always is my brother Brendan, and together we make movies with DBS Films. Today we're going to hop into the second episode covering The Girl in Cabin 13, and we're going to go over the production process for this movie. As we mentioned, this was kind of a change in pace for us as we really cut down on the crew that we were operating with. It was pretty much just me and my brother just working with the cast to deliver a movie, low budget, simple idea, and really it was a pretty smooth shoot. So we'll hop into more details on that. Be sure to check us out online, though. Our Discord community is the place to be. You get a whole bunch of free perks. You even get preferred casting in our movies if you become a super fan with us. It's super easy to do, and it's really fun in itself. So highly recommend you take a look at it, but you can find us on YouTube, Twitter, all those platforms as well. So, as we kind of mentioned in the last episode, I think the biggest change that we had was just how clear our outlook was in what the product and what we needed to do in the sense of having a finished product and having a finished product that doesn't get lost to the void or stuck in post-production. And I think we approached that with the pre-production. And because we approached that with the pre-production, we set up for a very simple and easy production process. And one that even if there was issues, it would be easy to kind of fill in those gaps. We kind of already had a worst case scenario for where we could pick up the climax, in the woods. So we had some flexibility in those options. But do you think the production was, again, us just being very focused in on making a simple, easy to produce and solid product that we can upload quickly?
Yeah, I mean, if you watch that movie, there's nothing crazy in like the shooting style. Shot a lot of it on the tripod. So it's very easy to shoot tripod stuff. Anytime they were moving, we used the Ronin S, which is pretty easy to operate. And then I had a lot of the Steadicam, so I was able to just, if I needed to pick up the pace, if I needed to run and gun a little bit more, I just get that thing on, and it just allows me to just move around and operate pretty much as a human tripod. I'm not following people or doing anything. I'm just pivoting left and right, following the actors. So they like. From the script to the production to the editing, this whole thing is just very simple. There is no crazy shots in there. There are no crazy sequences in there. It's all very basic stuff. That is by design. So, I mean, the production going into it, I wanted a simple production. Coming out of it, we got a simple production. We got a simple movie. That's pretty much basically what happened.
Yeah. And honestly, we mentioned it before. It's so much better to do that in the safe side of things and to go on the higher budget element. Because if you have a higher budget element, the worst case scenario is you don't have a movie. Whereas the worst case scenario for keeping it simple and straightforward is it's just not too detailed, it's not too fleshed out. But I would say this was one where, because we had that limited staff and it was really tighter, I think you just saw a lot more of the efficiencies taking place. And one thing that, I always see with the higher crew is everyone has a little timer on them. It's like, okay, is audio ready? Audio's ready. Is camera rolling? Camera rolling. When you're that same person, boom, you're set. So let's highlight, because another thing is this was our first one where we understood, hey, what's really important on the indie set when it comes to the equipment you're using? Because we used to have a whole bunch of other things that we no longer want to touch at all. So can you kind of highlight things like batteries, things like flexible lighting that's easy to use versus how we started? Just kind of go over the changes in production. Because again, not only did we have a simpler cast when we were cut down, we had a simpler equipment, and both of those things were really effective.
Yeah, so I mean, my whole mindset was to simplify everything, become a real minimalist shooter. And, going back on it, we used to run with huge Fresnel lights. These things are hot. They take a lot of power. They're very dangerous because if they fall on you, they're going to really knock you out, and then you get burned on top of it. And they're hard to move, and they're hard to set up. You don't have a lot of options. Got rid of all that stuff. We got 2 LED lights and a giant LED ball. All of them are great. I mean, I pretty much used the ball for the entire shoot last one. It's very soft, great glow. And these things all operate on D-pack batteries. This is another thing. We used to have these little Chinese batteries that we used to get to plug into the camera, into like all our equipment. If you get the D pack, it powers things for about 8 hours. You can power the lights for 3 or 4 hours. So you can take these things, you can run in the woods. You don't have to worry about plugging in cords. You don't have actors tripping over cords. They're very light. All the lights are very easy to move. They don't get hot. They can fall over on somebody and it just hits them on the head. It's like a piece of paper. It doesn't hurt them. That being said, always practice proper set safety. And so just lighting, just minimalistic stuff. Get LED lights, get D-pack batteries. Make sure like you can run all your set through batteries. Your life is going to be much easier. You used to have a sound guy and a boom mic. If you heard our other podcast, I do not like boom mics at all. They're very difficult. Dylan just did a short with a boom mic, having audio issues. Look, a profession, like the biggest indie misconception is that anybody can operate a boom mic. Your brother can operate a boom mic. Your friend can operate a boom mic. You just have to hold it. That is completely incorrect. The boom mic is probably the most talented person on a set, because not only have to keep it the specific distance away from the actor at all times, they have to keep it out of camera. It's just, you have to have a professional. If you do not have a professional boom operator, do not use a boom mic. Just use the lav mics. So we cut out a crew member. We get much better audio now. And as long as you understand how to attach the lav mic onto the actor, so there's not rustling. And this is very key, because if you're not attaching the boom or the lav mic onto the actor properly, you're going to have a bad time. But for the most part, if you can figure that out, if you test the lav mics, you understand how they operate, your audio is going to be fantastic. Your editing is going to be much easier because you don't have to fix audio levels all the time. We really cut back and optimize the audio. And then the equipment, we used to have like a giant Ronin rig that was just gigantic. Got rid of that, got a Ronin S. It's lightweight, it's easy to hold. Anyone can operate it, super easy. And then just looking at the actual camera rig, I just, once again, simplified. If it wasn't on the rig, or if it didn't have a purpose, I didn't put it on the rig. So I had the D-pack. We used to have the, like we talked about, the Chinese batteries. We used to have the little batteries that power the camera. They would last maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then you have to go charge them again. And eventually it catches up to you and all your batteries out, and you have to sit down, wait for batteries to charge. Put a deep pack on the back of the camera. The thing runs for 8 to 10 hours. Like I've never had a day where the D block has actually run out of batteries. So the camera just operates forever. I have 3 lenses, so we're not going through a ton of lenses. Like I said, I use a tripod. I use a shoulder rig with the fisherman rig. And that's it, man. There's not anything else that I used on this set. Everything is simple. Everything has a purpose. Everything comes from the mind of, if this is absolutely necessary, I'll use it. If it's not, if I'm starting to doubt whether I'll use it, then I'm just not going to have it on set.
Yeah. And that really, we saw it in the production process with us for the first time. I mean, we always kind of did it for the later scripts, but since we were kind of just working, me and you, on it, we were able to both say, no, we need to rein in the budget. We were able to rein in what we were doing when it comes to the equipment we did on set. So it really kind of shows us executing on the 2 most important elements, which is, how are you going to film this and what are you going to film, to rein in that budget, which again, the better job you do here, the better you're going to do on the other side of this all, because this is the one element you really can't control. And I think one thing that I want you to kind of talk about, because I see it a lot with indie production, and I think we even went through it a little bit, man, it's cool to have a bunch of equipment and expensive stuff that people, film these multi-million-dollar movies on. It's really cool to rent these things for, high prices. Do you really need it though? And I think one thing, like, yeah, I love posting the pictures from like our first few sets when we had a ton of people and it looks like this massive set. But I think a lot of people misunderstand just how flexible and compact everything can be and what the benefit is. So do you think, is that something that I think people get caught up in, what the equipment they're using is, when at the end of the day, it's whatever you use, just get it uploaded?
Yeah, with indie films, there seems to be a gravitation towards like having like a really high-end camera, very high-end lenses, or any kind of new and like greatest equipment. As far as like cameras go, a lot of people ask me about cameras. Yeah, the depth rate or the bit rate, is important. Obviously, like the Arri Alexa is going to be better than the Black Magic, but you have to be like a technician as far as like being able to shoot. You have to be able to show the difference between a Black Magic and Arri Alexa. I'm not at that skill level. I don't think a lot of indie DPs are at that skill level where if you take someone off the street and you show them a movie that was shot with a Black Magic versus one with the Arri Alexa, they're not going to be able to tell the difference, because there's going to be a lot more problems with your indie film where it's going to be detracting besides the actual camera. So, I mean, I would say you can shoot whatever you want. You can shoot with an iPhone if you wanted to, just to get the reps. And it goes for all the other equipment too. Like people just want crazy sliders and crazy gimbals and everything like that. It just adds another problem to your set. It's just going to be, do you know how to operate and use this piece of equipment? If you can actually use this piece of equipment. And a lot of times it just causes more delays and more harm than it does like giving you that extra like oomph as far as like maybe a slider shot here or a dolly shot here. You're better off keeping it simple, maybe adding a couple things to essentially, just give your movie a little bit more production. I'm fine with that. With the shapeshifter, we added some more shots and we have some more equipment just to work into that script. But for 90% of your movie, 80-90% of your movie, keep it simple and you're gonna have a much better time.
Yeah, I think that's such a critical thing. Like, honestly, guys, really try to make these simple things you can upload. Just because the experience you get from them is so much worth it. And I think we have a really cool style now with what we're doing is, if you look at the past 3 movies, we're kind of slowly working more and more things into it. So during the pickups, the haunting of the Morgan, or the haunting of the murder house, we rented the Rhino to kind of see if we wanted the motion to it, and then it ended up working for one of the pickup shots, so we added it into the shapeshifter. So I think the important thing to understand is, guys, you need to build your base first, your base product of just, this is something that I can release for as cheap and efficiently as possible. And then you can look at spicing it up. Because real quick, if you want to take a look at the production from now to production of the shapeshifter, I don't really think much has changed from our mentality. The only thing is our confidence in execution and what we decided to actually do.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a difference between being able to shoot and operate a camera on a technical level. So you go to school, they show you how to like make sure you're in proper white balance and make sure you got proper ISO and proper framing. There's a difference between that and actually using the camera like a tool, like a paintbrush or something that it's part of you essentially. And I've done nothing. Like I've studied filmmaking and I've studied and worked on lighting and I've worked on, framing from Girl in Cabin 13 to Shapeshifter. But I haven't done any other technical stuff, because once you have a basic understanding of this stuff, then that's pretty much it. Shapeshifter looks a million times better than Girl in Cabin 13. The only difference is I've had hours behind that camera and I understand how to use it as a tool now. I understand the technical stuff, but I know how to actually just physically makes things look good. And if you're asking me, how did I do that? I have no idea. I have no idea why that movie looks better than Girl in Cabin 13. It's just some kind of like osmosis, or just some kind of thing of just, you're essentially doing this for as many hours as you're doing it. Something mentally clicks, or you just essentially get better at it. I'm sure if you ask an artist when they first start drawing something and it's just kind of shitty, and then you ask them a year later, and when they're drawing something that's really, really good, how they got there, they don't know either. It's the same process. You have to get hours behind the camera. You have to get hours of uploaded footage. Don't lose it to the void, because it has to go through the editing process and it has to be finalized. And that, I think that this is a microcosm of the whole filmmaking process. How to become a better actor, get hours behind the camera. How to become a better DP, get hours behind the camera. How to become a better director, get hours behind the camera. Actually direct things and get finished product stuff, uploaded product stuff. And it's a muscle. As the more you flex it, the more you get better, the more you get uploaded footage, the better you're going to be. And I think a big problem with indie films is that they only make one film, or they never upload it. So they just don't have the reps and experience to make it to the next level in essentially the filmmaking game. And there's a lot of people who get lucky, they get out of school and they get a big project. But if you actually look back and look at those people who get these big projects out of college or, get their big breaks, they've done a lot of short stuff, or they actually have uploaded stuff, and they've actually worked on building that muscle, that filmmaker muscle. Mike Flanagan did it. He did a lot of movies before, did a lot of shorts before. The guy who did the Lights Out movie, he did a whole bunch of horror shorts before he hit it big before that stuff. So it's like, yes, these guys may seem lucky. You go back and look at their IMDb's. They've been a lot of work, a lot of practice, a lot of time in the gym, essentially working and honing their craft. So then when they actually get an opportunity, they can make the most of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's the biggest benefit from Girl in Cabin 13 is, we really started to, really exponentially double our growth when it comes to the experience of doing everything and having the ability to have all of this control through the entire process. And what I think, one of the best parts about it is it really kind of put the production time back in our court. It allowed us to basically make the decisions of, when the time's being allocated here. And I think this is one thing I do want to highlight just again, because I think, anyone that can follow this method of trying to make it as simple and straightforward and getting as many things uploaded as they can, I think is going to find success. So, one thing that I think is really different and unique here is we don't really have any roadblocks when it comes to working on someone else's schedule. And as we mentioned before, if you're working in the indie film community, I see it all the time, especially with like a lot of different podcasts and things I listen to. They'll talk about, yeah, I got to work with this editor and I got to work with this producer and I got to get this done. And then I have this done. And that's kind of how things get extended and, like you say, lost to the void. But one last thing I just want to touch on when it comes to why it's important to really do everything as much as you can I think it's important to do everything that you can from, point A to point B in the filmmaking process by yourself, reduce the budget on that, and then slowly increase the budget, just as we said before. So you have an understanding, so you have kind of an idea of what each process takes. And then it also, more importantly, gives you that baseline. Between the entire pre-production, production, and post-production process, we just had a lot more control as filmmakers. And I think it has two benefits. One, it should increase how quickly you can get things done, and also the budget, since you don't have to essentially pay people for doing this element of the area. And then two, you're going to get much more experience from it. You're the one actually learning and getting this experience. So when it is time to scale, you can have a better understanding. And then when you hire someone with those expertise, like you said, you at least know more and can understand and have a better dialogue with them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not the sole person driving your production from screenwriting to filming to editing, your timelines are going to be elongated because you have to worry about working with the writers, what their time frame is. And if you're an indie production, you're not going to be their priority. Okay. So it's just not going to happen. They're going to have other jobs. They're going to have a day job. They're going to be working multiple products. That's for screenwriters. That's for DPs. That's for directors. That's for actors and editors as well. You don't have the luxury of being a Hollywood big budget project where they hire you and they're like, all right, this is your project. You are working on this now. You do not get paid until it gets completed. Indie people are going to have a ton of stuff. They're not going to maybe have the best time management skills. So if you are not the one pushing your product all the way from start to finish, you're going to have a bad time. And the less amount of people you have from beginning pre-production to post-production as an indie studio. Now, obviously, the rules change when you get a bigger budget and you move up a couple levels. But for indie productions, the more people you have in there, the longer it's going to take to go from pre-production to post-production to final uploaded product. If you can control the script, if you can control the filmmaking, control the editing, most importantly, if you can control the editing, you're going to get a finished product much, much faster at a much more rapid pace. And you're going to learn at a much more rapid pace. The one advice that I would go back and give myself starting this whole thing over again would be learn how to write a script, learn how to shoot the script, learn how to edit the film, and learn how to upload it and do everything. And then as you grow, as you learn, as you develop as a filmmaker, then slowly start to bring people in, adding and just building the cast and crew from scratch. But start small, start with just yourself, or at least the very minimal amount of people that you can possibly have to get a finished product, as opposed to starting with a ton of cast and crew, because it's just, you're not going to get a timeline to be able to upload these things in a consistent basis in order to get your money back, in order to learn properly. It's just not possible.
Yeah, so I think, small but serious is kind of a way to approach it. Keep the budget small, keep the crew small, and just be very serious about getting that finished product. Because we're both firm believers that regardless, if you want to be a filmmaker and you have ideas, you can come up with something that's easily filmable, that can be an uploaded product in one way or the other, and you can use that to learn and get better with these skills and these talents. And then it allows you to safely scale up and have bigger crews and do that, because it's not something where we think, oh, we're going to be the best at this areas. No, we're learning a ton every single time we do it. But because we're learning and because we're able to do this all ourselves, we can control this, have much more efficiency when it comes to releasing products, and then learning much more from it. So I highly recommend this to be the approach of all indie filmmakers, just because I think you're going to have the most success. And I see it all the time. People really end up thinking it's going to be one movie or one thing that makes them, when the people who really do have the success, as you were mentioning, have a very long consistency. And the idea should just be every time you produce something, it's better. And that's really, I think, what we held true to ourselves. And that's what we were hoping to execute on with the Girl in Cabin 13. And that's something that I think we really did a great job of. So let's hop back into the production process there. As we mentioned, we always knew it was going to be a light script when it comes to the characters. We basically had our leads. So we had Chloe as Sunny and Stuart as Brad, couple going out into the cabin. We had Officer Reynolds, who had been in our movies before. And then we also had Reggie, who'd been in our movies before. And then we had 3 masked people, and I was the main masked person. So we basically had the cast, I would say, pretty much cast, besides our main actors. So you want to kind of talk about the approach to the cast, understanding we're going to keep it small, and just how we were locking in, and what was the approach that was different from the past movies.
Yeah, I mean, it was just finding the couple. I knew we had Reggie, we had Sean, who was one of my employees, playing Officer Reynolds. Kel's gonna be one of the best men, and then I could find 2 bodies, essentially people who would just go out there, put them a latex mask on, and just stay up all night. And there's a ton of people willing to work on a movie that we produce. So it's just finding the Sunny and the Brad character, and we cast through, I think it's like Backstage, and we just had a ton of auditions. It's not difficult. We pay our actors well. So there's a lot of people, going through it. We had maybe 150 auditions for each person. So 300-400 auditions for both characters. And it's just narrowed it down via Zoom. This is still COVID protocols in place. So once again, I had to do all my stuff via Zoom. And, we found Chloe. She was down to do it. She had a good look to her. She was, she's been in a lot of stuff. And she was just immediately my number 1 choice. And then when I talked to Stuart, he had a very good business mind. I thought he was in a lot of stuff that was good. He had a lot of improv experience, which is what you want in horror. So those were my number 2. It was, Stuart and Sunny, or Stuart and Chloe were 1 and 2 as far as, who I wanted. And, we offered them the role pretty quickly, and they accepted it. So the casting was super simple with this one. There wasn't a big issue up until, I think 48 hours before we actually started production on this. Chloe had texted me, and she had gotten in a car wreck. And this was, not a good conversation. I think I was in the middle of like a Saturday fun day, had a couple of drinks in me, and I get this long wall text from Chloe. And my first thing was like, all right, are you okay? She's okay. But it was a pretty bad accident. And the next thing was like, well, are you able to do this? Because I had hard money on the line. We had rented the location. We had all the actors ready to go. We had all the equipment ready to go. And, God bless Chloe. She's an absolute trooper. She's like, yeah, you're going to have to essentially keep me in the hospital to not let me do this production. And she came in there, she killed it. But at that point, I was already starting as a producer mindset to move pieces around to make the script easier for her, because I didn't know, like, she could walk, but I didn't know how bad she was hurt or she had a limp or anything like that. But she came in and she stuck to her word. She did a great job. So I think one of the biggest and most critical moments in DBS history is Chloe being able to step up and actually do this production. She could have easily said no, that she didn't want to do this, that she had an accident, and it's totally the right call. She could have easily done that, and I would have totally understood. That being said, if she would have backed out, Girl in Cabin 13 wouldn't have been a movie. I don't think I would have been able to find someone with 48 hours notice. And I don't think they would have done as good a job as Chloe did. So, Chloe definitely holds a special place in DBS history for the fact that she did step up, that she was in a lot of pain, and there was nobody forcing her to do this at all. She wanted to do it. She wanted to complete it. She wanted to be in this film. So, my heart goes out to her, and I really appreciate everything she's done.
Yeah, and I completely agree with it. And I think this also highlights another thing. We brought Chloe back for the newest movie, The Shapeshifter, because another benefit to completing projects is other people you can work well with. And I think the biggest thing that we're getting better at, and it's something we highlighted in our last movie, the majority of actors we're bringing back, but we also understand, just better how to work with actors and those things. So do you want to highlight real quickly where, like, having production done and working with multiple actors, you have a better idea what it's like to work with them, but more importantly, knowing actors you work well with and having that immediate chemistry makes it so much easier to film?
Oh, for sure. Like, I worked with Reggie on a whole bunch of movies, and I always write him into scripts because I know I could just text him. And I'm like, hey man, you want to do this? He's like, yep. And I know what I'm getting from him. I know his pre-production skills. I know his, his time management is very business oriented. And honestly, production is such a difficult job. And I really, tip my hat to any producers to get all this stuff coordinated and lined up, from location to actors to cast to crew. Is just very, very difficult because people respond differently to text messages, to phone calls, to emails. Some actors reply very quickly, others can take days. And to try and get all this schedule coordinated, and I'm literally asking a ton of people, are you available for this hour, this day, or does this work? It's a very stressful and time consuming thing to just be a producer. So working with actors I know that respond well to this stuff and that are essentially in the bag just makes my life a lot easier. So especially seeing with Shapeshifter, just the performance and their level of comfort with me as a director and my comfort with them as an actor, the rapport's there. I mean, even in Hollywood, you see directors use the same actors over and over again because they find someone they like, they find someone they work well with, and they keep them. They do whatever they can to keep them. So I think having multiple movies, working with multiple people, understanding, how they work as a person, how they work as an actor is just beneficial. And, moving forward, I think my goal is essentially cast the movie 70-80% with people that I've known and I've worked with before, and then keep the 20% for either super fans or, a couple new people that I've met via Zoom or backstage or some kind of casting call that we can slowly bring on board to see if they fit with, our whole goals and our game plan as a company.
Yep, and that's just another benefit and experience that you have, because I think the smoothness of the chemistry allowed us to be so much more effective and efficient and get quality takes for the Shapeshifter versus anyone's. But when I look at Girl in Cabin 13, it was a smooth production. I mean, really, we had some delays with some of the special effects side of things, which again, special effects is always going to be a big focus of ours, and it's something we're constantly looking to improve on. But when you look at the overall production, like, I think we were efficient, I think we were effective, and barring some of those delays, really, it was a well-paced and smooth production. So do you want to kind of highlight how you were feeling? I'm sure it was really nervous, but as you were getting through the days, we had me on set doing the on set editing. So we kind of clarify and see as it was starting to come together, it was easily for me to, be like, wow, this thing is really kind of paced well, and we're starting to get something good here. But, talk about how it was starting off, never really doing the DP work on a feature, having all of that pressure, slowly seeing some of the footage come around, and how you kind of felt getting to the final point of it.
I mean, the first day was rough. I was nervous. We took the actors out shopping, and I started to shoot some stuff in the woods that was just, I think we used like a little bit of it, but for most part, we had to reshoot it all. And yeah, I mean, I was a wreck the first day. I constantly thought that I was going to screw this thing up, that it wouldn't look good. But like, you can't be nervous around actors, so I had to pretend, I had to act that I was confident, essentially. When day 2 hit and I was just fueled by pure adrenaline at this point, I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this, might as well just go essentially balls to the wall and just do it like I want to do it. And then we started to get the feedback and the footage from Cal. And I was like, all right, this looks pretty good. Then he's telling me that it edits like butter, which is good, because this is a huge problem with their other shoots. They just didn't edit together properly. And it's a huge pain, and you just can't get a good cinematic look. So the fact that it's editing together, made me feel confident that, all right, my editor brain's working, my cinematography brain's working, they're working in conjunction and they're working together. Gave me a lot of confidence. And from there, we just kept going and going. And honestly, if you look back at this shoot, we had to do some stuff out of order. And you can kind of tell the scenes where I was starting to really get in a groove and my cinematography looks a lot better. And then you cut to a scene later on in the movie and it just doesn't look as good. Is because as I was progressing through that shooting days, I was learning. You can see my improvement through the 7 days that we were shooting. And once again, it goes back to, you have to get reps behind the camera. But in real time, I was seeing myself improve, where I think the climax, which we shot last, which was the last part of the movie we shot, because we had to do it on another day, just because I didn't want Chloe running through the woods as crazy as she did. I wanted to give her some time to recover from, the car accident. The climax looks amazing. It looks completely different than, the rest of the movie. And honestly, it's probably one of the best 15-minute sequences that we've ever shot. So once again, it just comes down to getting those reps behind the camera and just learning, improving, and getting better in real time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you really do see such a huge improvement just within the movie going into the climax, and it shows you just how much experience you get from it. And I think, like you were kind of mentioning, one of the best things now, and like I just think it's a must. I think it really is a must. Try and figure out how you can do it as an indie film production, but try and get someone who can edit on set just to at least confirm things for you, because you get a wave of motivation knowing that you like successfully completed a problem. The problem is, how do I film it? Does it cut together? And just being able to say, yes, it cuts together, you don't have that anxiety where it can continue to build up. And I think almost we had, a little bit of like past trauma from having these movies when we were like, yeah, it's going to cut together, it's going to be well, and not working. So real quick, I just want to, highlight your editor and cinematography mind working together, and then also being able to confirm it. But it's a puzzle. We're trying to just make our puzzle work with how we want it to be filmed. And what you do is you set yourself up the best way to do it in writing, you film it the best way, and then simply in editing, all I'm saying is, yep, we got it. But is that kind of, if you have that methodical approach to it, I just think you're going to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to editing and understanding what you need. When I go into a new scene, I block the actors out. In my head, I am trying to figure out how I'm going to edit this. Am I going to start with a wide? Am I going to start with a close-up? Am I going to, punch in? Now I cut back to a wide. And just having that overall flow, it's like, how do I get into a scene? How do I get out of a scene? What cuts, what reactions do I want? So as I'm blocking the actors out, I kind of do a shot list visually in my head, and then I shoot it. And for the most part, it comes out like I wanted in my head. I'm always super pessimistic. I never feel like I'm getting enough coverage. I never feel like I'm getting what I need, which I think in The Girl in Cabin 13 it was very basic. And then I went back in the murder house and I was really trying to get a ton of coverage to really be able to edit this thing how I wanted to. And I probably got too much coverage, but I was also very concerned that I wasn't getting enough coverage or I wasn't getting the edits because it was such a more technical movie. There's a lot more technical stuff in that movie. And I went back to more of a Girl in Cabin 13 shooting style with Shapeshifter. But it flows and it edits much better. Now I haven't really looked at this. Kel's, showing me clips of his edit, but I think it's pretty good. But once again, I never felt comfortable with the coverage that I got, but you kind of have to trust yourself. And doing 3 movies like this, I feel a little bit more comfortable, but as long as you're getting a wide and 2 close-ups, and then 2 inserts, 1 insert to get you in the shot, 1 insert to get out of the shot, you're going to have the coverage you're going to need, unless it's something super technical, like a Ouija board scene. For the most part, as long as you're following basic coverage rules, you'll be all right. The problem is that for the first date, we were not following basic coverage rules. And I think a lot of indie films do not do this as well. And it just comes down to being able to understand as an editor what you need, the basic bare minimum of what you need to get in and out of a sequence is just a skill you need to know. And you only get that by being the editor.
Yep. And on top of that, it highlights it for you and it becomes habit. If you end up making sure you're doing this, we now go to like every once in a while, maybe there's like 1 or 2 cuts that like we're missing. Like for the pickup stuff was really just enhancements. So it is something where if you keep yourself on it with this and you're able to confirm, you're able to keep yourself in line and just, it just makes it more efficient and more effective. Now, one thing I kind of wanted to highlight is we always try and figure out what we did well, what we could have done better during the production process. I think, again, pre-production and production, we really stepped it up when it just came to just the new mindset of keeping it small, keeping it, focused. But when it comes to just actually the look and the feel of everything, I think we had a really good improvement in look to some degree, in the sense that it was coming a lot from just, it looked more like a horror movie. I feel like we finally embraced that look, and it came from, your reps of just watching and taking a look and just finding a look. So can you kind of highlight some of the production things when it comes to cinematography that you found you really learned through the process?
Well, I think it comes down to what we were talking about before with having examples of things. Essentially a lookbook is a thing that they do in Hollywood when you take your script and your treatment to producers. You want to show them like what color palette you want to use, what kind of lighting are you going for. And in the first 8, I really never did this because I wasn't the DP. So I really studied like what horror movies look like, what good cinematography color, looks like. I built my own LUT that I use in camera now to just make sure everything's like all the footage is coming into the camera how I want it. So I don't have to worry about it in post-production. I can literally just drop the LUT on there and it's properly exposed. Everything's perfect. And I always felt like our movies were very bright and they almost had like a Hallmark effect to them. So I really studied lighting, and I don't think I got it right in Girl in Cabin 13. I don't think I got it right in Murder House. I do think I got it to a point where I feel pretty good with it in Shapeshifter. Now I really haven't gone through it yet, but just looking at like the footage that we got. So I think maybe it's the 3rd time's the charm. But just understanding different lighting structures. And then, in Girl in Cabin 13, we use a lot of gels. I don't use gels anymore because they're very difficult in post-production to fix. So if you're going to use gels, it's great. Good for you. They can add some cool stuff to your movie. Just understand that they're difficult to fix in post without the image falling apart. You can do the same thing with just making sure you're primed with your white balance coming in. And then in Murder House, I use 2 realistic lighting. So I'm trying to use like natural lighting or just realistic lighting. And in Murder House, it was a boarded up house. So I don't think the lighting realistic is just kind of flat, which is fine for that movie. You see a lot of it wasn't found footage, but you see a lot of like haunted house where they break into is kind of flat lighting. So I think it gives a more realistic look to it. And then in Shapeshifter, I kind of threw that out the window and said, look, I'm just going to make every shot look cinematic. I don't care where this light is coming from. We're going to make it look good. And I think I'm hoping that's going to be the one that everyone really likes. I don't think there's going to be anybody complaining about light. Spoiler, a lot of people don't complain about light. But what they do complain about is tone and the mood of your movie. And the biggest way to get that is through lighting. So if you're getting feedback about mood, about tone, about atmosphere, take a look at your lighting, because it might not be what you essentially need to be going for.
That's all very good information, because I mean, again, I think lighting can be something that you just got to get those reps in. You got to get the understanding of it. And it's going to be interesting to see. I feel the same way looking at the latest one we filmed. It seems like the pacing improvements from the murder house and the cinematography improvements have really kind of stepped up to it. So, overall, though, I think wrapping up with the production, again, we did have some delays with special effects, but that's always going to occur. So we basically wrapped, with like a right in the morning, and we're cleaning everything up. We knew we had to do pickups at the climax, and we had to do the intro later at a different location. So we still had to do that. But overall, I mean, I would say it was a very smooth, very efficient set. And I think it goes back to kind of having a small crew, keeping it contained to where it was just you, Stuart, and Chloe for the most part. And then, myself moving the lights every once in a while. And then we had Dylan step up to be the PA for the most part on that end, so I could focus on the editing process. That really started to shine. Would you say that, you're kind of like, okay, this is a process that is, much easier, much better? Of course, you added a whole nother role for yourself, but did you start to see, okay, we're really able to just scale with this?
Yeah, when I finished that shoot, I was like, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it moving forward. Until our budget gets bigger and we can actually afford to get people on board. And trust me, when we bring people on board again, I'm going to make sure that they understand and they have a proper role and they really add value, because I'm very hesitant to add anybody else to this set because how smooth and efficient we were. Murder House only solidified that because we could have been lucky in Girl in Cabin 13, but Murder House was just as smooth of a shoot. And then we did Shapeshifter, which is a very ambitious story. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of technical shots. It's a very difficult script, by far the most difficult script that we've ever done. And the shoot was super smooth. So it's just understanding how that stuff works, that you want to keep it minimalistic. And even if I get a large Hollywood budget, I still fall back on this and make sure that everyone there is serving a purpose and they're just, really important to the overall production. And there's just no one there just, not giving 110%, or not really adding value, because I think it's a big indie mistake to have a big crew, especially when you're new, especially when you don't know what you're doing. Because time is money and money is time, and time is the most valuable asset on set. And when you have a lot of other people, a lot of cast, a whole bunch of other, people helping you out on set, you're running on their time. And that time, whether it's 5 or 10 minutes to get everyone ready to go, multiplied by the amount of people that you have for your cast, it all adds up, and it just makes your shoot much, much more difficult.
Yeah, it really is something to me. Like I said, small and serious is the way to kind of approach it, and getting things uploaded. I think that's the best way to just increase your filmmaking skills. And really, that's the important part. What we can take from us now is our experience more than anything. So it shows when we ended up doing the Murder House and then also Shapeshifter. I think we had a lot of improvements. To me, looking back, honestly, this was the movie when, as I was getting through the editing process, I was like, I really don't have any issues with the way it's filmed, with the way it was kind of covered, with just the sound element to it, like all of these like features. My only real issue was that, we played it safe. And again, that's like the best issue to have. Like that is a great issue that, when you look back, you're like, well, I guess we could have done Was there anything looking back at Girl in Cabin 13 that you're like, aside from us just doing it to play it safe, was there something that we wish we had done different with production or filmed differently?
Not really. And it goes back to just being able to have a story in your head and be able to put that story into a final uploaded film is like a big milestone for us. This is the first time where that movie that you watch is pretty much what was in my head. Now, obviously, the version in my head was much better than this one, but for the most part, it stuck to it. You could see it, it plays out how I had it in my head, and being able to take a story from your head, be able to translate it to screenplay, to translate it to the performance from the actors, to translate to actually be able to shoot it as a DP and to be able to edit it like I want to, is a testament for any kind of indie film. Because I think a lot of indie films, they turn out completely different than what people have in their heads, or at least the main producer or director has in their head. So it gives you a lot of confidence. I could always fall back if I have a story similar to Girl in Cabin 13. I said, look, I've done this one before. I can make something similar to it. Not a problem. And then as we're starting to scale up, Murder House is a movie that I had in my head. And then Shapeshifter, same thing. It's the exact same movie that I had in my head, but they're getting better each time. And when I say better, I mean, they're getting closer to my original vision, and being able to tell a story from your head and put it on paper, to be able to shoot it and to edit it like you want it to, is probably the first step for kind of any independent filmmaker or just filmmaker in general, to be able to tell your vision and get it uploaded to a platform, and to get feedback on it is just, it's a milestone, because now I'm getting the feedback on story, and I can fix the story. I can fix the story in my head before we actually shoot it, knowing that the changes in the story that's in my head will show up on film when we actually go do a 2.0 or 3.0 version of these movies.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I feel like when we are writing it now, the vision that we have is so much closer to that final product, and what it ends up looking like. But I think one important thing, and one of the last things I kind of want to touch on, is I think the reason for it, and kind of what I hope the overall theme for the Girl in Cabin 13 is, I think the reason that we have a much clearer version of that in our head isn't necessarily because we did get a lot better, which, looking at it, I would say it was a step up from a lot of the processes we did. But I think it was more so with pulling our expectations back. I think the biggest benefit we had here is we had an understanding of these first 8 movies. We had what we could do, and we simply said, okay, well, at the bare minimum, let's try and get these items so that we can have a, under budget, producible product that hits the story home, and we overachieved on the delivery of that, and then we can continue to build from it. But to me, I still think it's more so, not that we were like, our vision was like, no, we got better so we could execute our vision. I think we simply just pulled back our vision, knowing what we're actually capable of and what's reasonable to expect at our budget levels and what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I think the two things as an independent filmmaker that you have to really have a hard conversation with yourself is, what is your budget and how do you make a film with your budget constraints? Because budget is going to be a huge problem for a lot of indie filmmakers. So you have to figure out, how much money do you think this movie is going to make? And then, what kind of budget do you have to put in place to try and either recoup that cost or, make a profit? The second one, which I think a lot of indie filmmakers just overlook, is, what's your skill level? I think a lot of people come into this, what's your technical level? And like, what are you bringing to the table? If you're a director, how many things have you directed? How many shorts have you directed? How many features have you directed? Because they're completely different beasts. A short is completely different than a feature. And being honest with yourself is going to be, your greatest asset at that point. I'm not going into, knowing that I don't have a lot of directorial experience, going and trying to shoot like The Invited. Like, we shot, that was our second movie. It's a crazy technical movie that we had no right even trying to attempt. And I think I see a lot of movies where, people bite off more than they can chew because they think they're at a higher level than they really are. You have to grind, you have to rep, you have to get that experience before you can really start to take on bigger, projects. And, start small. There's no shame in starting small. I just think a lot of directors and filmmakers get this grand vision in their head that they want to just do this crazy technical movie. And will they be able to do the movie in their lifetime? Yes. You're just not there yet. Don't start off with it as your first movie. And I think what Kel said is a good point, where I realized where I was technically after making 8 movies. I was overshooting myself in every single one of these 8 movies, other than maybe like The Unseen. So I went back to that model. I shot something, or I wrote something that I felt at my technical level, at my development level, at my level in the filmmaking game, I could shoot and I could execute on. And that's what we did. And every single one movie, the next 2 that we did, I get a little bit bolder and I add a little bit more, and I get a little bit bolder and I add a little bit more. But I'm allowed to do that because I'm growing. I'm understanding the process better. Each time is a new rep. I get better. But I'm honest with myself on both budget and my technical skill level at the time of shooting.
Yeah, I mean, that's the huge factor, and it's always about progression. And I saw it straight hand, or straightforward, when just comparing the difference in the footage and the improvements with the last one with the shapeshifter. I can easily attest to just how much you're leveling up on each one of these shoots. And again, same thing for our actors. Again, we said this shoot was really smooth because we worked with them on Girl in Cabin 13, with Chloe. Then we worked with Dylan, and we worked with Dylan and Tyler on the next sets. So I think it's almost kind of like a big refresh for us. And, just to kind of touch on it one last time, I really do see, we always say like the Hateful Eight. We say the Girl in Cabin 13 is kind of the next milestone. And the reason I think it's the next milestone, and the big one for me, is we just really locked in the processes. And I just want you real quick to kind of stress again, your process is your most important part. And the entire, from start to production, that whole thing is what you need to focus on. Because I feel like indie film producers only focus on the filming element sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, without the Hateful Eight, there would be no Girl in Cabin 13. All the lessons that I learned from the first 8 are in Girl in Cabin 13. And it's just, a top-down view of it. And if I would have just done Gone and The Invited, I would never be able to shoot this movie. We would never be able to, where we are right now. But we got 8 of these things up. We got them uploaded. We got feedback from it. And we really couldn't get good feedback on the first 8 because on a technical level, they just were not there. And I think this is another issue with indie films, is they just aren't on a technical level to get story feedback yet. And if you're finding that this is a problem, that you're not getting feedback on your story, people are pointing out audio issues, cinematography issues, acting issues, I think you should look at scaling back. And Girl in Cabin 13 was the first one where people were like, hey, we want more character depth. We don't like this story. We want to change the story. And I love that feedback. I really do, because that's going to make me such a better filmmaker. And it's going to give me much better ideas. And we're already looking at different ways to shoot this movie again. But nobody brought up any of the technical stuff about this movie. The sound was great. The cinematography, while it wasn't the greatest, it is passable. Like, people weren't pointing out that it was bad shots or anything like that. So if you're an indie filmmaker, that's the feedback you're getting, is more on a technical level. I think you're just shooting movies that you're just not at that level to shoot yet. So I'd look back at the process and maybe scaling back. And if you are getting feedback on story, then you're at the right spot, man. Look into like adding a little bit more meat to that bone, and just trying to get a little bit better each time. But that's a big step for us, is to be able to shoot a technically sound movie so we can focus on story and really, really make cool stuff, as far as like cooler stories and better plot lines and deeper characters.
Yeah, I mean, I think really the first step would be, what's like that bare minimum product that I can get uploaded, whether it's a short, whether it's just a little clip, whatever it may be, to kind of just get something done, is really where you should always start. And then you just kind of make those, those smart decisions and those small gains from there. And the reward again is really the experience level of it. And that's why I want to continue to make these films. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about the post-production process, and again how a smooth pre-production, a smooth production leads into a much different post-production than we were usually used to, and how that can just kind of improve morale when it comes to just moving forward with the next projects and the benefits of it. So as always, be sure to take a look at us online. We got a bunch of other really cool things going on. The number one thing is our Discord channel, where you can become a DBS super fan. Why would you want to become a super fan? Well, if you're a super fan, you get a ton of perks, including preferred casting with us. So we're going to hop into the next episode where we talk about the post-production. As we mentioned before, editing is where the movie gets made, and those hard decisions are basically something you have to go through. But thankfully, Girl in Cabin 13 wasn't too bad. So until then, have a good one.